And we're live. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is the Reinventing the Tattoo community. We are beaming out. Today is Art History Talk with Travis Louie, an amazing illustrator, artist, teacher, all sorts of. He's amazing. We've been following his Facebook. It's one of the few times I can get on Facebook and walk away happy and satisfied. He's always posting up amazing art and movies, inspirations. He's an art history teacher. Anyways, it's going to be an amazing show. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to be testing this out. We're streaming out on the Facebooks, on the YouTubes, and again, primarily through the Reinventing the Tattoo community. So while this is going out through the internets, I'm going to do a little bit of testing to make sure. And I also want to talk a little bit about our other upcoming events because we are beaming out like 5 times a week now. Okay. So obviously this is our art talk with Travis Louie. This is the first art history talk that we're doing on the channel. We're exceptionally excited. Other streams that we have coming up, every Thursday at 12 noon, we have the Tattoo Collecting Podcast with Fawn and Jordan. They talk to serious tattoo collectors. Every time, I say this all the time, but whenever I get the pictures, they blow me away. The collectors that they're interviewing are amazing. So whether you're just interested in tattoos, or even if you're actually a tattooer who's interested in hearing a seasoned tattoo collector's experiences, 12 noon every Thursday. We have reinventing drawing groups 2 times a week now, at least. We have one on 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoons. All these times are Eastern. 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. We have the drawing group with Jason Lesser, and then on Monday mornings at 9 o'clock with Jake Meeks from the Fireside Tattoo Networks. It is an amazing way to start off your Monday mornings. I mean, I'm racing around. I'm not even showering. I put my hat on, we hop on, but then we go through art first thing in the morning, and it's an amazing way to start the day. At noon on Mondays, we have Let's Talk Tattoo with Mark Lascarbo from Needle Jig, and then every Monday night, we have subscriber exercises with Guy Aitchison via the Reinventing the Tattoo Canon. This is the actual subscription. It's how we charge admission for it, but it's amazing. It's not only like 350, 400 pages. I mean, they're not pages anymore. It used to be 300 or 400, 350 pages. Now it's this massive online course. It's got dozens of videos. And every Monday, everyone gets together as a group and does art exercises based off of the curriculum. So it's definitely worth subscribing if you enjoy these kinds of things. Okay, then we also have, let's see, digital editing for inkjet stencils is going to be a demo that's on Wednesday the 27th. We've got Nick Baxter is doing a still life coming up January 31st. Point being, there's so many events going on, I can't actually list them all. So head on over to the Reinventing the Tattoo app in either the app stores, or you could go straight there, community.reinventingthetattoo.com. And the events link is the first one that you'll see. And if you've missed any of these, or you've missed a ton of them, I've missed a ton. I haven't missed any. To see the replays, go to the app, click on library, video library, and all of the shows are there forever. So no matter when you're watching this, you can check out the replays. Anything else here? I'm going to stop. Oh, Inkjet Stencils is the sponsor for this show. And yeah, you should definitely check out either inkjetstencils.com, or you can go to their folder inside of the app. It's at the very bottom of the main menu. And they've got an amazing technology. They you manipulate your reference on the computer or on the iPad, and then you print out a stencil. It prints out the stencil. Andre Malcolm is doing full back pieces and sleeves pretty regularly with the system now. So if you're either in the app or you're on Instagram, check out Andre Malcolm. Andre Malcolm Tattoo, if you do a search for him, he does amazing large-scale Japanese work, and he's printing out his stencils all in one shot. Okay, I am going to fall into the background now. If you have any comments, questions, leave them in the chat rooms, and I will try to answer if there's ever a lull or at the end. And I'll be here to fix any problems or to pull up some of these amazing artists that we'll be talking about. So take it away, Guy.
All right. Thank you, Gabe. And thanks everyone for tuning in today. This is going to be a really interesting talk. It's the first in our ongoing series of art history talks, because I think a lot of artists get into tattooing without a lot of knowledge of art history and kind of learn about it in a haphazard way. I mean, I know that I kind of did. And so it's kind of nice when people share their influences in the artists, especially people who aren't part of tattooing, that shaped who they are and how their style evolved into what it is. My own influences, I know, starting at early childhood included a lot of the classic greats, Da Vinci, Rembrandt, Van Gogh, and eventually Max Ernst, who did these incredible organic abstractions, which if you saw those and you see my paintings, you say, aha, all right, that's where some of that came from. There are other artists who regularly post their influences. Gunnar, who you'll find on Instagram as Art of Gunnar, he will be joining us in 2 weeks, 1 day shy of 2 weeks, on Tuesday, the 2nd of February, for another art history talk. And he's posted a lot of really great images of pieces from art museums with his brief captions about them. And this stuff is fascinating. It really is worth learning about what some of these artists went through, what it was like at the time in society to be an artist. Hundreds of years ago, it was a little bit harder. Some of the artists like Rembrandt and Monet were flat broke, far broker than a lot of us tattooers are, even being as great as they are. So anyway, today we've got Mr. Travis Louie joining us. Some of you may have heard of Travis's name first through Juxtapose magazine. And many of you are going to see his work and say, that guy, even if you don't know his name, I'm sure you've seen his work. He was sort of, it became known as a result of his tiny little matchbook portraits, which are, incredible, very meticulous and flawlessly executed with this great sort of quirky style to it. Thank you, Travis, for joining us today. I'm curious to hear a little bit about your history as an artist, where you started out, what your early learning experience was, your education, all that stuff. In fact, I'm not even sure where to begin, but thank you, Travis, for joining us.
Sure. Just
Aha!
else. That is a guy named Jason DeQuino. I don't know if you know him. Also, he actually is a tattoo artist.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. The matchbook thing. I'm sorry. I made that mistake.
I
knew that. I knew that. In fact, in the back of my head, yeah. And do you know Jason personally?
I did know him. On and off. Just for circles. We just kind of people just kind of lose touch. In fact, sadly, one of my friends that I lost touch with passed away yesterday. His name is Van Arno. I don't know if you know who that is.
Oh, yeah, Van Arno. Yeah, he was incredible. I did not know that we had just lost him yesterday.
He just passed away yesterday, or at least that's what I heard this morning. And, I'm sad I didn't get to talk to him again. I was just getting ready to call him, and reach out to him because I hadn't heard from him in a little while. I like to keep in touch with all of my friends. It's kind of funny, There used to be more of a community when we all had shows and we were all traveling out to the West Coast. But now with the pandemic thing, it kind of slowed things down a bit. So a lot of us aren't traveling to shows. I mean, are you still doing, have there ever been conventions?
There might be a few, but I'm not sure I'd even be comfortable going right now. And yeah, I mean, just in general, the sense of community in the tattoo world has been a lot harder to maintain. We've tried to do these online things a bit, and we, like in Gabe's description, we've got some where we actually get together, and there'll be a group of a dozen of us, zooming together and just working on our drawings and commenting on each other's stuff. And it's really nice. It's not the same as being in person though. And
right. But it's funny that a lot of the artists that I grew up looking at least the ones that were working in the profession that I wanted to be in, I got to meet them later because of conventions. Like you would go to like Comic-Con or something and these guys would just be there. And that was kind of cool, So somebody whose work, like a guy like William Stout, I don't know if you know who that is. He's done a lot of work, a lot of the dinosaur paintings recently. Gosh, he did some concept work for the movie The Return of the Living Dead. Those drawings of the zombies, those are his. But I didn't get to meet them. I didn't get to meet him until there were conventions, and I could go to a convention, and there he is, and he'd be there.
That piece from Wizards, I know that piece.
Yeah, and that guy's work is wonderful, Or Mike Kaluta, or anybody from that old studio. I don't know if you remember Jeffrey Jones, and actually he became Jeffrey. Is it Catherine Jeffrey Jones or Jeffrey Catherine Jones? I don't remember exactly. But he had switched genders at some point before he passed, and so it was him, it was Mike Kaluta, and it was Bernie Wrightson.
Oh wow, yeah.
These really crazy this crazy Frankenstein. I don't, you've probably seen it. And then
yeah. In fact, there's been a few people I know who've posted images of some of those Frankenstein pieces. I know that Gunnar had posted one, and somebody the other day. It's on the top of the back of my head, but yeah, I've actually spent a bit of time staring at those images recently because someone posted.
I love that stuff. I really, it's remarkable.
Yeah, it's such a foundation for many of people within, not just the tattoo world, but would you consider your genre or subgenre the lowbrow art world, or what would you call it?
I really don't know what to call it now. I know the root of it, going down to the West Coast, out to the West Coast, it was, I guess they called it lowbrow at first, but then it's not really so easy to give it a I guess it's easier to just call it that, right?
Yeah.
Talking like a guy like Mark Ryden and XNO and guys like that, that showed up.
Yeah.
Todd Shore. I don't know if you're familiar with Todd Shore's work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Eric White. Those were the guys, and they kind of called it pop surrealism at some point, probably around 2002, 2003. That's what they called themselves for a little while. But it's I would like to think of it as just there was this time that there were a bunch of these artists that were on the West Coast, and they were displaying these paintings, and they got some traction, some popularity, and it went from there. Some of them are still around.
That moment had that name, but
yeah,
names of genres are really just words.
Exactly. There was the two hot rod guys, right? There was Keith Wiesner, right? And then of course the big guy, that's Robert Williams, right?
Yes,
that was the big guy. Again, all around that time, and then the connection, of course, goes back to like I don't know, like the '60s and the '50s, and you have like Zap Comics, and and you have who's the guy that did Rat Fink? Remember Rat Fink?
Yeah, Ed Roth. Yeah, Ed Roth, right? Or Big Daddy Roth.
Big Daddy Roth, So without him, this stuff doesn't exist, pretty much.
Right,
right.
It's true. There actually were a few of the, right? Now we're going back in time a little bit. We're talking about the Zap Comics. So of course you've got Robert Crumb,
right.
Who's amazingly prolific, and his work kind of pushed out into the mainstream a little bit, not because he became mainstream, but just because it's so damn good, right?
Oh yeah.
And then of course you've got Greg Irons, who became a tattoo artist, and sadly was hit by a bus in Thailand. But yeah, his Zap comics were especially trippy. Rick Griffin. And I think Griffin's work was very influential in skateboard art, particularly in graffiti art. You had the Checkered Demon. Oh man, what was that guy's name? The Checkered Demon guy.
There was guy before that is Basil Wolverton.
Oh yeah, okay. So now we're going back even farther. Wolverton.
Yeah,
no, this is great. I love it because he was an influence on them.
Yeah, and then then you have this, they were all, a lot of these guys really loved like horror movies, so they were buying like Famous Monsters of Filmland, that Forey Ackerman magazine, and so there's a little bit of that in the paintings. Like you look at Todd Shore's paintings, a little like it's with those guys, and I guess with me as well. It's essentially what we grew up with and our ephemera, the kind of things we looked at, and that's what shows up in the paintings. Look at these Todd Shore paintings. It's like this, like Fred Flintstone, and this like King Kong, and these are beautiful, beautiful paintings.
Right. Oh, they're stunning. Yeah.
But this is the stuff he grew up looking at, and it's just because we're like filters, or we absorb all the sensory information, and then we just kick out our version of it, or just or what it connects to us, what we
Right. Because as kids, let's say you've got a particular action figure that you love. It's not just going to be because of the show and you like the show, but there's going to be the way that you connected with it. The character in the show, you like them because, maybe it reminds you of your dad, and it's something really positive about your dad, and then that becomes, something about fatherhood and this broad sort of cultural view of fatherhood, and then looking at it through this filter, and before you know it, you've done a painting about this broad cultural view of fatherhood, but it's an action figure, right?
Yeah.
But because it's filtered that way, through that experience, that's the filtering process.
So I mean, with my work, it's a combination of all these things that I looked at, and then of course my connection to the immigration experience, right? So a lot of my earlier paintings were all about people coming here. So it was always these old, they would look like 19th century photographs, but they're monsters, and they're sometimes they're animals, sometimes they're these mythical creatures, but they're wearing suits, and their pose like an old cabinet.
Very formal, yes.
Yeah, and that's because I wanted to be able to show this kind of it's kind of my veiled commentary on the immigration experience, right? But without actually showing people that are from Europe or from other countries, but I'll just make up these sort of monsterish people, right? Like the Strangler is one of them, right? And then this is kind of what I'm doing now, is this kind of stuff, which is more these animals. But
they've got so much attitude.
I like the idea of people making really interesting discoveries. Like this guy discovered this Yeti, this giant monster, but he's so big he doesn't fit the frame.
Right. No, I love the crop. So, there's clearly a period attached to these. What is the attraction to that period? Is it, partly because of this idea of the immigration experience and the historic view of that,
and also because there was a moment when someone took a photograph and said, "Well, it must be true. It's a photograph, right?" Not today, of course, not so much, but there were these two little girls that faked fairy photographs.
I remember that, yeah.
Right, and it's because they could use photography, and they made these little cutouts, and they were just really good at it. Which is a real trick, because back then, of course, when you take a photograph, you really don't know what you're going to get until it's developed, right? Because you're shooting the negative, and then you have to go get it processed somewhere, unless you process it yourself. But most people didn't have access to the chemicals and the paper, right? To make a glass negative or whatever they used back then. This is in the 19th century. These little girls are doing this, and it's crazy. Look at these photographs they were taking, and people believed it because they hadn't seen anything like that before. So I chose that time period because I thought, well, if these fantastical things exist in the 1890s, you see this photograph, you believe it, because back then they didn't have Photoshop.
Right, it's proof, actual proof. Now a video isn't even actual proof anymore, right? You can have a video of somebody saying something, and it's a deep fake, so what a strange era to enter.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about video and you think about Rodney King, right? Like, that's not fake, because they didn't have technology back then to do that, to fake that. So that's really Rodney King getting beaten by cops. You know what I mean? So, right?
Right. So now you could have somebody stand up and say, wait, that's fake. And whether it's fake or not, suddenly half the people in the world who want it to be fake will say, yeah, it's fake.
What I find so crazy about the Rodney King thing is that it's not like the guy had a phone. He's actually using a video camera. You remember what video cameras looked like back then? So
yeah, I mean,
he has this big clunky thing in his hand, and he's shooting this thing, and it's like, what? So that's some effort, not like now. You just whip out your cell phone. You're just like, oh, that guy said a thing, and then it's everywhere, But even before, I got into making these kinds of paintings, I was in art school, and I would go to I went to Pratt. It was in Brooklyn, an art school. And it's the 1980s. And in the 1980s, they didn't, they didn't even talk about a lot of the artists that are accessible on the internet today. So I would have to discover it on my own in their archives in the library. But I would go into they had this amazing old library at Pratt, and famous for shooting that there's like a porno movie was shot there, or scenes from. I guess it was that Dallas Cowboys one. Debbie Does Dallas. Like, so I think, from what I understand, there were some scenes that were shot at that library, which I think is pretty funny. Real secret stuff.
How did they talk the library into letting you do that?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, they had a film department, so I guess, back then, if you were in the film department, and you're shooting with film, you could fake it, right? Because every art school had a film department, whether it was like NYU had a film department. You get your little ID card, you go downstairs and you rent out the camera and you have a crew and you go, shoot something. I'm shooting this for class. Not to be distributed on 42nd Street, but for class, right? But anyway, in that library, they had all these artists that were discovering that I'd never heard of before, that they didn't even mention in class, because each generation of teachers, right? It's I think art gets lost, right? Because you have the famous artists that are in the textbooks. That's the key, really. You got to get into an art history book. If you're not in the art history book, you'll be lost in time. It's like Eddie Cantor. You know who Eddie Cantor is? Eddie Cantor. He's a performer from the silent era, from radio, and at one time he was so popular, Eddie Cantor, that he even had a float in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Eddie Cantor, right? And this guy, he was around forever. And really, really famous guy, one of the most famous comedians in the world, or actually in North America. But then, just times change, the zeitgeist changes, people's interests change, and he got lost in time. Sadly, because a lot of his films weren't preserved. You know what I mean? Maybe the technology was different back then. Luckily, we have the Laurel and Hardy movies over at Hal Roach Studios. They saved those, but the ones that this guy was in are gone. So the only reason why I know who he is because I was watching an episode of Boardwalk Empire, and on the show, Steve Buscemi's character has a friend named Izzy, and that is Eddie Cantor. And I was like, wait, and then I looked it up, and then there's the guy. So I was like, oh, no kidding. So you can have this whole giant career, and then just like that, gone, right? Artists are like that. Painters are like that. You could be William Bouguereau. You could be the most famous French painter in 1875. And yet, by the time 1950 rolls around, nobody knows who the hell you are. You're gone. Even though while he was alive, unlike, as you say, Monet and Max Ernst and those guys, they were broke. This guy was not broke. This guy was rather wealthy. He was rather well off because he was really famous and people loved his work, but it got lost in time because, the zeitgeist changes, people's interest changes.
Right. Well, chances are he was one of those artists who knew how to do really well what was popular at the moment.
Right.
Right. He was not the first through the door with that idea.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be credited in the art history books for being that.
But if you know how to paint and you're a decent painter, it's sort of like there's certain people you look at for certain things. Like for him, I always loved the way he painted hands, right? He had a knack. So there's something about the way the gesture is, right? He always knew what pose to have perfectly for those hands. He's really good at painting hands and feet. Kind of crazy, right? It's like, so I look at his work for that. Not that the rest of his paintings aren't great. They are. They're kind of nice. There's a couple of his paintings at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. There's one at the Sterling and Clark Museum in Massachusetts. I guess, what is that? That's I forget what town that is, but that's in Massachusetts.
Way western Mass, just south of Pittsfield. The Clark.
And the Pittsfield
Williamstown.
and the Pittsfield Museum has 2 Bouguereau paintings in it as well. But he's one of those guys that just got lost in time, and that we didn't really, for whatever reason, you go to art school in the 1980s, and the teachers don't even mention him because they don't know about him. They've never heard of him. They're busy talking about whatever is in the textbook. You know, that's just the way it is. So
Right. Okay. So what do you think makes the difference of who makes it into those books and who doesn't?
well,
If
yeah,
it's not popularity.
some of it is marketing. You know, we've reached an age where someone has to tell you that somebody has value. Especially in that world. I hate to admit that. I hate to say that, but sometimes that's what it is. You know, sometimes you look at something for face value, and it's not necessarily all there. You know, it takes like a minute to you have to read a few paragraphs or something to describe what it is you're looking at.
Context. You have to know the context.
Context.
And
Exactly.
art history is all about context, because right now we can, with our digital tools, paint literally anything and make it look amazing.
Right.
And so now that it's completely wide open, something from 1950 might not look nearly so impressive until you understand the context, that this blew some doors open, that, you know, it completely broke some conventions, that it opened eyes, that it, you know, created whole new worlds of possibilities, that the current software wouldn't be possible without it. And then you understand why it has value.
Well, and with that, I would say that there were great painters before, and there will be great painters after. That's just the way it is. You know, people come, people go, things work out. Sometimes you see something and there's a familiarity there, and you go, and then you can connect the dots. I think of, well, one of the painters that you would ask me about. His name is Vibert. He's a French painter, and he was alive around the same time that Bouguereau was alive. In fact, he was born 15 years after and died 2 years before. And this guy's work is really, he's like I would call him like a gag painter. His stuff is like really just kind of funny. I love the idea of humor in paintings, you know. There's one painting he did called The Diet, which is hilarious to me. It's about
Okay, that was the first one that I sent you.
Yeah. And basically, so you have this cardinal, right? And obviously he's on a diet. And look at his face. He's just so beaten down, right? And behind him, just beyond his, you could hear there's a commotion back there, and there's like a giant banquet being thrown. He can't eat any of that, you know. Look at the food they're bringing in, and he's just sitting there with his little cup, with this little biscuit. That's all he's got, He's like, oh, if only, if only I could go in there and eat with the Pope, and he can't, because he's on a diet, and it's pretty funny stuff. But there's other ones. There's one where there's a guy who is a cardinal, and he's posing. It's called the preening peacock. It's, yeah, if you pull up on that, and I'm obviously, this guy's making fun of him. He has no idea, and then he bothers to put a peacock in the background to show you what this guy's doing. It's like I'm so impressed with myself. Look upon me as I am standing before you with this wonderful presence. With all these accoutrements.
Right, it ends up becoming a painting about narcissism.
Yeah, which is hilarious. I love this stuff. Now,
are you a Goya fan at all?
Yes, I am.
I love how Goya was. His whole situation was he was well known. He had become the flavor of the minute, even though he did absolutely endure in art history. And if you were royalty, you would get painted by him. But he did not like royalty, and he did not paint them flatteringly at all.
Yeah.
He made them look like the piggies that they were, and they would look at the finished painting and say, "Oh, look how fine the draperies are. Look, but the faces are just not the faces of good people."
Yeah. No, I love it. I love, and and that's why I like Vibert so much. Because boy, can he paint too at the same time. Not only is he a funny guy, but boy, that guy could paint like the devil. This is pretty much the height of what these guys can do in the 19th century as far as French painters go. Between him and Gérôme and Cabanel and Bouguereau and all those guys, they all painted like this, or some version of that. Like a guy like Gérôme, he could paint really well. I never really liked the way he painted faces, but boy, that guy he could paint some stuff, man. He if you look at his Orientalist paintings, and some of the backgrounds are just kind of nuts. There's so much going on. Not that one, but there's other ones. That's kind of a lesser one. But he was something, Gérôme. there's one of his at the Met. It's Pygmalion and Galatea, and then of course the other big Jerome paintings that we're familiar with are all the gladiator paintings, the ones that Ridley Scott was looking at before he made the movie Gladiator. You know, like Thumbs Down. I'm sure you've seen that painting, where the I guess I didn't send it to you guys, so it's not part of the list of paintings. Gabe can look it up. Just go to you type in Thumbs Down and Jerome, and that'll come up. I'm sure you've seen the painting.
I've got it up. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it.
Oh, okay.
Technology.
Ah, yes.
Oh, I'm still not doing it right. Hold on. Still not doing it right. Hold on.
I was gonna say that looks like a Paul Klee.
There it is. You know this painting. Yeah. And of course, there's some discussion of what that actually means, thumbs down. Does it mean kill him? Or does it mean keep him alive? Does he deserve to die? Does he not deserve to die? What does that mean? I know in the movies they always have the thumbs up, meaning that the guy lives, you know, but I'm not so sure. There's a lot going on in this painting. Look at all that.
Yeah, just that area in the upper left.
Yeah,
massive.
A lot. And it's wonderful. There's a whole school of these painters in France at the time, him being one of them, Cabanel being another one. Just wonderfully skilled painters, but they had a little something to say about the time, and they told it through other I guess through their version of what they call historic paintings, right? Then there's Alma Tadema. Do you know that painter? I think I'm pronouncing it wrong. He painted a lot of these sort of Greek people celebrating, big paintings, a lot of pageantry. And but it was very funny because if you look at the paintings, everybody just looked like a bunch of English people dressed up as you know, because you can't escape that. It's like watching Spartacus and looking at Kirk Douglas's haircut. You know, you just kind of go, well, all right. I mean, that's, you know,
right. Well, that's what makes the so-called Orientalist paintings of the time interesting. Yeah. And there were a few artists that kind of went there because nobody had seen that stuff. You didn't have photos. You couldn't look, on the internet and see this stuff, right? And so it was very exotic looking, very different. And you could pretty much put anything you wanted in a painting and say, yeah, it's really like that there. They do have 40-foot elephants. And people would have no reason to doubt you.
Oh, yeah. No, it was... That's the thing about that, right? Because people just didn't travel. It wasn't possible, economically, and even just physically, everything's by boat.
It wasn't safe, right?
Yeah, and this painting's amazing. I saw that painting at the Louvre, and the lighting in that is kind of remarkable, But I love this. I love these sort of like gag painters, right? People that would make jokes. And even today, I look at a lot of people that do that kind of work, that work for the New Yorker. People like Peter DeSev. He does covers for the New Yorker once in a while. And I had just done some concept work for Netflix, and he was one of the artists. And I got to see his sketches, in the production. And all his stuff was just so vibrant, and there was so much movement in his drawings. And but also they were very funny. They were just like like he would take the notes and he would just draw these things, and it was just a little beyond, right? There's a guy right now, a caricature artist. His name is Thomas Fluharty. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. But you can find him on Instagram. It's his last name is spelled Fluart, Fluharty. Maybe there's an H in there. That guy's amazing, and he does these great caricature portraits of just about anything, dogs, people, whatever. Guy's fantastic. If I could share the screen, I could pull him up real quick if you want.
You should be able to. I do have him.
Oh, you got him? That guy.
Oh, wow. I
love his work. I think he's terrific. Just look at his drawings. Look at those little hands. That's hilarious. And then his
Oh,
dogs. Look at his dogs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That guy's something else.
Now, is this actual paint we're
That's
seeing here?
he's a painter.
Yeah, I always have to ask.
Well, it's funny about that. A lot of these guys can paint too. They don't just work digitally. He could do it if he wanted to. I guess.
Yeah.
If he had to. Sometimes they ask us for an illustration, and you want to do it quickly, and it's not so easy to scan an oil painting. You know what I mean? It takes a minute if you don't take a photograph of it first. But it's true. This guy's drawing is just remarkable to be able to see all that, to know what parts are the parts you want to exaggerate, right? And it's pretty remarkable stuff.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by caricature artists, and I've tried just like messing around with Liquify and Photoshop on photos just to see if I can figure out where to exaggerate. And it's a thing that I think certain people just really have a knack for.
Oh yeah, and they could be so brutal. They could pick the one thing that you hate the most about yourself, and that's the thing that they, like, oh, look at that nose. Oh, forget it. Now it's a monolith on the guy's face. Just.
And then beautifully painted too. That stuff.
Oh yeah. So between him and a guy named Jason Seiler, he's another one. That guy's kind of amazing. He does pretty straight stuff too, though. He just did the Time magazine portrait of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That cover, that was his. And he's painted the Time magazine Man of the Year a few times. His name is Jason Seiler, who's a great guy and really talented.
Here's a question. Not to backtrack, but I'm always curious about this because artists don't exist in a void. They have to have people paying them.
Oh yeah.
To exist. And for example, the artists you're talking about, they're contemporary. They're doing commission work for magazines and things like that. So incredible stuff. But let's rewind to the 19th century French school of painters that we were just talking about.
Uh-huh.
Who were they painting for? Who were their clients?
Well, it's a system, right? So you have you find patrons. It's all about finding patrons, and the patrons pay for your work. You do portraits of wealthy people, or people royalty, that sort of thing. If you're lucky, you win one of these big competitions, and then you could. It's almost like getting a grant, right? Just to be accepted at one of these academies was like a big deal, You had to apply to be in one. It wasn't so easy, You kind of had to be well read too, not just a person who could paint well. There's a lot going on, and they're pretty much their livelihood was these patrons. They made their money doing portraits for people,
Right now, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, Girl with the Pearl Earring, about Vermeer.
Yeah, exactly.
And it really shows the relationship between the artist and the patrons at the time, because if you end up with one major patron who is most of your livelihood, it ends up being a pretty uncomfortable situation. And it's much better to diversify and have a whole bunch of patrons, and of course tattooers are a good example of that.
That's the plan, right? That's the plan. You want to be able to diversify, but not everybody was fortunate to have multiple, high roller kind of patrons. There are.
And then the kind of patrons you have end up shaping the kind of work you do. So let's move over to Maxfield Parrish. Right now, I love Parrish. I think that technically speaking, visually speaking, his stuff is just spectacular. And I also think it's really cool how he would actually build models in his garage of these mountain ranges or buildings and things like that, create photo references for himself so that he could really nail this stuff. Very, very well thought out in terms of his projects. His lighting. Look at this lighting, right? But he's not really regarded as a fine artist. He is a quote unquote illustrator because he did these paintings for, whatever, General Electric catalogs or calendars and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And somehow he is the person capable of doing these paintings somehow not considered a fine artist. You won't see his stuff in the Art Institute of Chicago. How the fuck did that happen?
Well, it's because of the whoever's in charge, right? Whoever is on the shoulders of art historians past and has decided that this guy isn't one of us. You know, he's not a fine artist or whatever. I think that's a mistake. You know, if you think about what he did, it's a wonderful connection to a moment in time, right? And also with his work, it's nothing looked like that. He was the only one whose work even looked like that to begin with. Just on that alone, I think he deserves a look, you know, or some merit. I think it's a mistake for people to just scoff at it so quickly. But you know, it was the times, you know, because modern art was here at that point. So we're talking like the 1930s happened, right? So,
right. Meanwhile, his work, Norman Rockwell's work, are known by far more people. They're, you know, hanging up on people's walls in millions of American homes. Definitely a lot more consumed by a lot more eyeballs than the museum artists. But somehow they just don't get to be in the pantheon.
well, with him, he happened to be doing the covers of the Saturday Evening Post, which was everywhere, you know, and all these publications. So he became even while he was alive, he was a pretty famous artist. People knew who he was, you know. And for a long time too. His career he had a long career with Rockwell. I mean, he was a high level illustrator from the 1920s till the 1960s. He just kept going. That's a long run, man. You know, 40 plus years of just him painting these things, you know. And it didn't hurt him that he painted those 4 freedoms to get war bonds during World War II. So that raises your profile. You're helping the country, right? You're helping the war effort. So yeah, he's something else, Norman Rockwell. Yeah, and he worked like the devil. I don't know too many painters that made as many paintings as he painted. You know. I mean,
he's just got an incredible catalog of work.
Because he just worked nonstop. You know, he just never stopped. On even holidays, his poor wife was like, "You got to come down. You got to come get out of your studio." And he's like, "No, I gotta keep painting." You know. But it was tougher. You know, I remember there was a show of his, a big retrospective, and it was at one of the modern art museums in New York. And you know, a lot of people kind of turned their nose up at it because it wasn't, you know, Kandinsky. You know what I mean? But I think in terms of history, it's important. It's important to recognize what was around, what was going on. You know, it was the closest thing to a genre painting, right, in the United States that everybody knew, right? Was Norman Rockwell. You know, there's certain iconic images of painters that people know because they're famous images, whether it's American Gothic, you know, the painting with the farmer and the pitchfork and his wife, you know, that, you know, everybody knows that painting, you know, or that James Montgomery Flagg version of Uncle Sam, I Want You. Everybody knows that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we all know that painting. Everybody, you see it, you go, oh yeah, I know that painting. You know, it just, some things have a lot of traction, you know. Everybody knows that, Uncle Sam, you know, really famous painting, you know, right? So sometimes you get lucky and you survive, like your stuff survives the test of time. People know who you are, and it keeps going, you know. But a lot of these other painters, not so much. You have to learn about them in school, you know. I mean, my art history textbook didn't even have Gustav Klimt in it, to give you an idea of what was going on. And now, of course, everybody knows who he is, right? In art school, like, they would tell you about Gustav Klimt. But in 1985, not so much, you know. It's one of those things, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, some of these artists, they struggled to get recognized outside of their illustration career, and of course, Klimt had a very specific style. You know, nobody else looked like him.
Right.
But you know, if you made your money commercially, and then tried to step away and do something different, people just didn't seem to care about it. You know, Art Nouveau um, became Muka's known thing so much that when, towards the end of his career, he did this epic series of what were the Czech, what was it? The Slav epic. The Slav epic, right. When he did those pieces, most people could care less. It's not what he's known for. And they're incredible paintings.
You ever get to see him in person?
Slav epic, Gabe. It's SLAV. But Mucha, Mucha.
And these are gigantic paintings.
Right. Yeah.
Look at that photograph. Click on any of those, you'll see look at that. Look how big he is compared to the painting, right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And, as an illustrator, he was cranking out, again, like Rockwell, vast quantities of stuff, iconic things. And, his stuff has definitely survived in our culture. His, Job Cigarette Girl is as well known as Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
But
it's definitely he gets style points for that. I mean, there were other Art Nouveau guys before him, but they didn't quite have what he had. There's something about the energy in his line. There's all these curvilinear shapes that he had.
But it was because he was just such an overall capable artist that he was able to, reduce it down to this very graphic thing. But that wasn't really where his heart was. No, those Slav epic paintings are they're like monsters. They're really amazing. One of these days I'll get to go over there, and of course, the way things are right now, I gotta wait a little bit, but I do want to eventually go. I think they're in Prague. I think that's where those paintings are, right? They had a couple of them here in Massachusetts about 10 years ago. I believe it was at the Worcester Museum. They did a retrospective of Alphonse Mucha in Massachusetts, and I just missed it. For whatever reason, I just didn't get up there. And I think they had one panel from the Slav epic there. It would have been kind of cool to see that. Yeah, I imagine it's got to be nerve-wracking to transport paintings like that overseas.
How would you, right? How would you transport that?
It's gigantic. It's old. It's you've got to make a crate the size of a mobile home to ship it.
Right.
And that would scare me. But at the same time, it's amazing that people can see this stuff.
Oh yeah. Someday I'll have a studio big enough where I can make big paintings like that.
The problem with big paintings is then what do you do with them when you're done?
Exactly. What do you do with it? Unless you sell it to somebody, what do you do with it?
Well, I mean, like I've got a couple of big ones that one of Gabe's clients has got hanging up in their business because they've got a big enough lobby. It's like, we gotta put them somewhere, So I've kind of all but stopped doing big paintings, for a while now. And I feel like since I've done that, I've become a lot more critical of myself as an artist. I feel like I have to get way better before I can go back to a big canvas like that, if that makes sense.
Well, the other thing about big paintings is it's good for our eyes. As I'm getting older, I got to wear glasses now. It's harder to work on little things. So, but big painting, it's all big marks. It's a little different. There's viewing distance. I could step away 8 feet. And I could see stuff.
You can be loose. Yeah.
You could, it's a lot harder. To do the little paintings when the eyes start to go. So lenses everywhere. I look like a guy that when I'm working, I look like a guy that makes fake IDs. I have so many lenses on me. I'm just like all this stuff.
Yeah. Are you familiar with this painter named John Berkey? He's a sci-fi illustrator. Okay.
I know John Berkey. Sure. I spoke to him on the phone about 9 years ago. There was
amazing.
I was putting together a sci-fi show at the Rock LaRue Gallery in Seattle, and he was one of the artists I contacted. It was John Berkey. It was who's the other guy though? It was there was Jim Gurney, because I know him. He lives right in my town. So
nice.
You get a hold of James Gurney, the dinosaur guy. And then
I love his posts because everything that Gurney posts is educational and helpful. He's really amazing that way.
Oh, he has a lot of knowledge. Whenever it's funny, I sometimes I'll be in the middle of my class in New York, and I'll be like, I forgot something. Who would know? And then I call up James Gurney. I just call him up on the phone, and he has the answer. and then he tells me and the class, oh, it was this, which is great because he knows all about methodology too, which is very interesting.
Yeah, he's got a method for everything. It's like, you want to do a nighttime scene? Hang on one second.
I do want to just say the Norman Rockwell Museum also is in Western Mass. So between the Clark and the Rockwell Museum, Western Mass is pretty amazing for doing field trips with, even for people like me that don't know much.
Hey guys, unfortunately, I have to quit the call and come back because I've just lost my sound. It's just going to take me a second.
Okay.
Cool. And yeah, James Gurney is definitely
he's great.
A big influence.
He's great. He's a great painter.
Do you remember when the comic book museum was in Northampton?
No, I don't remember that at all.
It was probably like 10 years ago. Eastman and Laird got it together, and it was a full-on, comic illustration museum, and right in Northampton, right in downtown here.
Yeah, I'd heard that he had lived there or something like that. Like Kevin Eastman lived.
Yeah, they had a heavy metal or the publishing company or some such. They had a pretty strong roots here. Yeah.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry about that. Anyway, the reason I had mentioned John Berkey and Gabe, that's Berkey, is the double mirror system that he used for a lot of his stuff. Travis, are you familiar with that?
The double mirror system?
He was a lot of his paintings. He's got a mirror behind his head on the ceiling, another one on the wall in front of him. So he's actually looking at that much of the time while he's painting. It allows him to be 10 feet away from his painting while he's working. And so there's this, let's pull up a couple more. There's this great energetic looseness to it that you can pull up a couple of these closer.
Well, I always love this stuff. He would paint these spaceships, and it's full of material, but when you get up close, it's just a couple of marks.
Yeah.
He was the guy that painted the Impressionist spaceships, is what I used to call it. The Impressionist.
Yeah.
It was terrific. It was like if Sargent painted spaceships, this is what they would look like.
Right. And then when I heard about the mirror thing, I was like, okay, I get it.
That makes sense, right? Because then you're only seeing the big shapes. Because viewing distance is based on, right? Like the bigger shapes is what you see first, not the detail. So if you're stepping away from something, right, and you're 15 feet away from something, what do you see first? The big shapes, the big values, the big temperature changes. You see all these big things first, not the tiny little details, right? And that helps them not get bogged down on it, which is great.
Yeah, and I think that's especially being tattooers are notorious for it. I always struggle with it. It's like, where do you not put the detail? Where do you keep it loose? And how do you even keep it loose if it's not like natural to you? And one thing I do when I'm painting these days is I haven't gone smaller than a 1/2-inch brush in a while, and I'm just forcing myself to do everything with that. And so it limits the resolution in a way that has been helpful for me.
Yeah. So have you been looking at Dean Cornwell at all?
I'm not familiar with Dean. Let's check him out.
Dean Cornwell paintings. He's one of the guys that Gurney really is admired. He's a Golden Age illustrator. Golden Age. So we're talking like 1930s, 1940s. The Dean of illustrators, Dean Cornwell. I don't know if Gabe is looking that up right now. Or,
yeah, no, when I think of the Golden Age of illustrators, I think of N.C. Wyeth. Are we in the right period here?
Hold on a second. N.C. Wyeth is just before Dean Cornwell.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, now I'm all over the place here. I have so many things pulled up now. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little lost.
Got to start closing some windows. Yeah, and there you have another interesting comparison is N.C. Wyeth and then Andrew Wyeth. And Andrew Wyeth's style and technique is almost illustrative, but he marketed himself differently and is seen as a fine artist, not an illustrator.
Well, I don't think he wanted to do what his dad was doing anyway.
Not at all. It was a totally different approach to art.
Definitely didn't want to do what his dad was saying. There's some pretty great Wyeth paintings, Andrew Wyeth paintings, and there's some pretty great NC Wyeth paintings. A lot of movement, a lot of action in NC's paintings. These are quieter, the ones that they're sort of a.
I love this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not nearly as illustrative just in their action, their intent, what's being told. There might be some sense of, okay, there's a tension between these two characters, but it's not going to be like, when something is an illustration, generally they're, illustrating a scene from a story or something very specific like that. So, I mean, that's clearly one of the differences.
One of my favorite paintings from him is I guess Old Man Winter. Like there's like a man in the snow. I think maybe got the title of the painting wrong. It's there it is. I think that's it. Click on that one there. Yeah, if there's a better image of that, but
This top one?
huh?
Yeah.
That one right there, yeah. Look at that thing.
Yeah. And obviously that is a fanciful interpretation,
Yeah.
And where is it that one artist who does this is allowed to be a fine artist and another would do the same thing and be branded as an illustrator?
Well, again, it's up to the talking heads that that control the art market and tell you what something is and what something isn't. And which is it's unfortunate that we've come down to that. I think it's a mistake. I think all art is up to interpretation, and I think that just what makes art great or what makes art connect to a person isn't necessarily based on the intention that the artist had when they made the painting or made the art. It's after that. So just because Maxwell Parrish made a painting called Daybreak or made paintings for Edison Mazda, it doesn't mean that that's not great art or that because the purpose was different. I could find many artists that make things that are fine art that the paintings are just terrible because they're just terrible paintings. That doesn't change the quality of a painting, what it's used for. Intention is irrelevant in terms of face value, really, right? I mean, if you, I always go to the garage sale test. Like if you go to a garage sale and down the street, and there's a bunch of things laid out, and there's some paintings there, and you go, oh, you look at the paintings. There's a certain kind of painting where you look at it and you just go, I know that Aunt Zelma did this painting when she was in high school, and this is or I know that this is that thing they did with the nail and the string, with all the nails. I'm sure you've seen that, or this this was done in shop class with the plexiglass and all the fishing line, right? That this like you just know when you look at it, but then there'll be this one painting and you're like, wait, look at this thing. What was that? And you go, oh, I know, that was used for an ad. So you had an illustrator in your family that must have done this. And there's a certain quality. So that's the garage sale test, right? You can look at something, you can see what it is. Now, a lot of art that hangs in galleries might not pass the garage sale test. Like you might look at it and you might not think it's art. You know what I mean? Because it's not in a room with a white wall, because what you've done is you've taken away the context. Some art is not transferable. The context is not transferable from location to location, is what I'm saying. And
rest assured, if we saw either of your artworks in a garage sale, we'd buy them up immediately because they fucking are awesome.
Oh, thanks. That's very nice of you to say. But it would look like my stuff would look like somebody must have done this for somebody. That's what it looks like.
Basically, seeing it outside of the gallery context, like it's just in this humble setting of a garage sale, and you're just looking at it in that context.
Exactly.
What do you see then? That's a very interesting way of filtering art, and some of it you might look at and just say, holy shit, I have to buy this. But
Right.
then some, which might actually be worth $60 million, might be like, yeah, it looks like this is where they clean their brushes.
Right. Right. Well, again, context, like as you say, is everything, right? So if you okay, right now at the Dia Center or Dia Center in Beacon, New York, there is a pile of glass, just pile of glass. Now, if you saw that pile of glass at a construction site in Hoboken, New Jersey, you wouldn't think other than, hey, it's just a pile of glass. But because it's in this museum, right? The context is different. That's all. Now, I'm not saying it's bad art or anything. I'm just saying the context is not, right?
Right. Yeah. Taking this thing, taking a shark and slicing it up and displaying it in a museum makes it not a medical study of a shark, but a piece of art.
Right. That's like the Sensation show in Brooklyn. Remember that?
I don't know if I'm familiar with that one.
That's I think Damien Hirst had these giant. He had like things encased.
Yeah, I know. Well, the piece I was just talking about was Damien Hirst. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he had a couple of pieces like that at the show, and it was kind of a big deal because there was a couple of things that upset people not because of what they were, but because of the title of the piece that upset people.
Mm-hmm.
It might not even have actually been the thing they said it was. Just because you say that it's elephant dung and this and that doesn't mean it actually is. That's just, you just wrote that on a piece of paper. That doesn't really mean it may have been. I don't know. It could be, but that offended people, I guess. Nothing worth art shouldn't offend you. It's really not.
Yeah, but some artists set out to, and there's no law saying that we shouldn't be allowed to.
No, I think that that's it's up to the artist what they want to do. Now, whether or not people like it or whether that's something else, but maybe does it work? Does it get their attention? It's a lot harder now. You have to do more outrageous things to really grab somebody's attention that way.
Okay, well, so just to bring this around full circle, back to Travis Louie.
Right.
What is it that you want people to experience? What are you hoping they'll experience when they look at your art?
Well, I like to tell these stories with these paintings. So I hope that, when people look at them, sometimes it's more decorative, like those fish, it's more decorative. That's really a more decorative thing. It's something I just felt like doing. But also it's an homage to my dog who passed away. That dogfish on the top is actually my dog who died in July. So I put him in there, I want to put him in something. So I'll just put him, and they're like, why a fish painting? Because it's a place that he couldn't go, So that's why it's tough from a line drawing. Just imagine what this will look like as a painting if you know what my paintings look like.
Yeah.
That's so.
It's going to be some hours.
Yeah, it's going to be some time, right? Like this, I did for the poster nutbags, and they are a group that I guess how do I explain? They collect rock posters, most of them. So there is there's a couple things in here that say something about the band Fish that happen to be in this painting. I guess you'd have to be a fan of Fish to know.
Well, yeah, but it's also kind of cool how you can hide these obscure references in the paintings, and they can work just as a decorative element. But if you happen to be in the know, it's like an Easter egg.
But the art director for that, I mean, that's what she wanted, And then that's just me doing my handwriting. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I remember back in the album cover days, there were a couple times I made the mistake of just adding stuff that I felt like adding, hidden things, and they'd send them back and say, I need you to remove this.
Oh yeah, no, the art directors are very specific. Okay, look, this is what I want. I'm paying you to do this thing, right? And then this is all the paintings from last year. I just thought when I saw them all together, it reminded me of a yearbook. So
that's everything that you did on in paint last year.
Last year, yeah. It's all last year's painting. A lot of paintings last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep plugging away.
That's what you do,
Yeah.
If I think that people ask how do you succeed as an artist, and of course that's the big one. Just keep working at it. But do you have any closing advice for any artists that might be watching that are just we've talked about the different levels of relative success of being pigeonholed, being known only as an illustrator, all these things. And I guess it's hard to ensure your career against those things, but you seem to be walking that line,
I still do illustration work every now and again. Yeah, I get.
Oh yeah. But you're definitely like, I think you've avoided being pigeonholed because, there's not a genre that you can firmly pin you into.
Well, I would tell people just to follow what they want to do. Be cognizant of the world that they live in, pay attention to what's around you and try to absorb as much information as you can. We as artists, we are products of our time, right? And our work is informed by the past. So don't be afraid to look behind you and see where you came from. And you might find more things to learn, when you look at our artists before, even the artists that you're looking at now, that you think, oh, that's amazing. And then, there's more. Because you can connect the dots. It goes back. And that's kind of wonderful, and a lot of my paintings when I first started were inspired by movies, particularly German Expressionist and film noir, these black and white pictures from the 40s, the lighting, right? So, I mean, when first time around, I was doing paintings of chickens as gangsters. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? I couldn't sell a thing, back then. I probably could sell them now, but I don't want to do that now,
Right.
Just whatever influences you, don't be afraid. Just keep going, keep looking, keep making, always keep making, and everything will be fine.
Be the best filter you can be.
Exactly. Right.
Nice.
That's all you guys, right? That's everybody. Tattoo artists, anybody that makes art of any kind. You're absorbing all these things, right? A little harder for you guys though, I think, because you have to deal with people who want certain things, right? Maybe.
Yeah, but I think that when you're at it long enough and your clients earn your trust, you start to be able to reach this nice in-between place where they're giving you enough of a suggestion where you get a light bulb goes off. It's like, yes, I want to do that. Now that I've seen this idea, I want to do it. And they know you well enough that they can throw you the right ideas. And in a perfect world, and I believe I'm one of the privileged that's in this situation, they come to you with ideas that are great because they understand you in ways you might not. And
that's the best, when people seek you out because there's a specific look that your work has, and then they could, again, sort of connect the dots with it. And then they trust you and let you do your interpretation of something.
But they might have seen you do one of these and one of these, and they'll say, but what if you were to do one of these with one of these? And you'd be like, I hadn't thought of that, but that would be brilliant. And so that's one of the things I love about tattooing. But when I paint, I don't want anybody's suggestions at all, really. Okay. That's my place for, just running.
Unless somebody hires you. So doesn't anybody hire you once in a while to do that too? Like every round again, you get someone who goes, I want a thing. I guess it's up to you whether you want to do it or not, right?
Yeah, not really. I don't really get a lot of commissions, and I don't know if I would want that because I think that I start to doubt myself. I was reading about how H.R. Giger had at one point stopped letting people see his works in progress because they'd see him and say, ooh, I want to buy that. And the minute he had somebody who was a purchaser, he couldn't work on it anymore because every single brushstroke is like, is this what they want?
Yeah, I see what you're
saying. And all of a sudden the whole intent behind doing the pieces has been kind of corrupted a little bit. And I know that it doesn't work that way for everyone. But as a tattooer, I'm super fortunate that I can have a place where I can filter all of that out and just, because I have some things that are lined up in front of me. It happens. You get ideas. I don't ever run out of ideas. And it's just a matter of, okay, I've got time coming up. Which of these ideas do I want to, steer myself towards? So it's not like I desire that kind of input the way that I do with tattooing. With tattooing, I thrive off of it. But, it's part of the pendulum, the creative pendulum of really needing to care about what the world thinks and working with them and learning from that. and then swinging away from that and going deep into yourself and finding what you love and exploring that as much as you can.
Well, it's nice to have that kind of an audience, though, right? I mean, you get to have
For
people
sure.
out there. I get to this point sometimes where, and this happens to other people, obviously, where they just want you to do your greatest hits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I get it. There's musicians that fight to play that song over and over again. But you got to love it, I guess. So, I remember watching an interview with somebody, and it was Avril Lavigne. Remember her?
Oh yeah.
She was complaining about a song, about singing the song, and then I don't remember if she corrected herself later and said, you know what, it's what the fans want, so you just do it. And now maybe she's older now, so maybe but when you're young, you don't really, you just kind of have this thing in your head, where you think, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. But then as you get older, you go, oh, maybe not so much. Maybe it's okay to do.
Or if you experience a high level of success early on, you might make the mistake of thinking that everything that you do is going to be met that same way, and it won't necessarily.
Well, that happens too. I've seen people do that. I've seen artists where they just can't take something and they keep going with it, and then eventually people get tired of it, or it doesn't connect for some reason, or just something just doesn't work somewhere, and then they just make adjustments, because that's what we're doing. We're always making adjustments, right? You have to adjust with the zeitgeist. The zeitgeist is cruel. It's always traveling, always moving around.
It is.
And
sometimes it can make a shift overnight. And,
oh yeah.
You have to either be ready for that shift as an illustrator, or you have to be resilient enough with your vision as an artist to where you can still produce something that's going to, be appreciated within that context.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. And it happens with everything, right? Painting, music too, right? I mean, you get to a certain point where maybe they don't hire this guy anymore because his film scores always sound like that. I mean, you want to get somebody else, so maybe a different sound, and then they have to adjust, right? Even though obviously they know how to write stuff and they could make anything really, but they get pigeonholed because they've done too many scores that sound like that.
Right. You end up in a rut, and I think that as artists, we have to let ourselves, explore outside of our comfort zones. I think that that's a real unfortunate thing for an artist, is to get too deep into comfort zone, especially if you have clients that are paying you to stay there. You start to lose your edge, and then when it becomes necessary to explore outside of it, it might just not come naturally. It might be a struggle.
Oh yeah, which is why I'm drawing these fish now, and I'm going to make fish paintings for a little while, which is very
nice.
different than what I was doing before. You move with where it takes you, right? So hopefully people like it. Who knows? I have no idea where it's going to go, but we'll see.
You never can know, and it's kind of nice not to.
Yeah, well, it's better that way. I think if you know too much ahead, that's not good.
Just to interject real quick, speaking of people liking things, I'm going to read off. Do you mind? Is now a good time to read off some of the comments?
Yeah. I'm about to wrap it up. So let's hear from our audience real quick.
I'm going to try to go pretty quick with some of these. Russell McLean says, dope. Pedro Simayo says, hi guys. Sean Fernandez, howdy with claps. Good afternoon, everyone. Elvis Marura. Ray Alvia says, Mark Bodie. He was, I guess when you guys were going through the illustrators, the Mark Bodie came up. Martin I can't pronounce Slovakian names very well, but Martin says hello from Slovakia with claps. We've got hello from York, Pennsylvania. Respect from Corpus Christi. That's from David and Jim. Patty Simpkins, I think this might be for you, Guy. Hello, we know each other. I used to do massages at the tattoo conventions. Bob Montaga's, I can't pronounce, Montagna's friend. Eric Clark says, dang, I've got to run off to my appointment. Thank you, guys. This was really interesting. Michelle says, hi. We've got, Vaquero Cruz in Spanish says, I'm a fan of yours from Pueblo, Mexico. And then, I have many of magazines. The same person has many magazines. Bruno is sending claps and smiley faces. Godex says, saludos a todos. I think I know enough Spanish. That means hello to everyone, I think. Edgar says, hello, everyone. And then last up, Jin says, hi, everyone. Edgar says, hi. Shamak says, hello, everyone. Regards from the UK. So good time for this conversation in my life. And there's others, but rest assured, people loved it. Thank you very much.
All right. Hey, thank you everyone for tuning in.
All right.
We're going to be doing this regularly. Travis, thank you. This has been fascinating.
Sure,
and actually, we're going to try to make a point when we do the final edit of this to collect all the names that you and I mentioned during this. And when we repost the video, have that list of names. So anybody wants to dive deeper into researching any of this stuff, because I know we kind of skipped around really fast there, but it's a lot of ground covered.
And somebody mentioned Mark Baudet, right? So that's like, that's Cheech Wizards and Cobalt 60?
Yep. His dad, Vaughn was his dad. He's actually a tattooer.
Yeah. So we're going to make sure that those names are all available to people, because it's so much ground to cover. You could lose days just exploring their websites.
Oh yeah.
And so we'll be back for another art history conversation in 2 weeks with Gunnar. Thank you, Travis, so much for tuning in. And if you ever feel like joining us for any of our other online stuff, and if you ever feel like leading a quick like a 1 hour sketch workshop, anything like that, we'd love to have you again.
Sure thing. You bet. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
And thanks, Gabe.
No problems. I'm just going to, if you've been watching to the end, please check out the Reinventing the Tattoo app. You can find it on either of the app stores, or just go to community.reinventingthetattoo.com. And Travis does have stuff for sale if you go to travislouie.com. I know there's prints, books, probably some originals, but either way, go to travislouie.com and then guyaitchison.com. And